This is lesson 24 in our 26 lesson course entitled Leadership at the Points of Contact. One of the points that I made in the previous section, probably several times as a matter of fact, is organizational success is determined by the quality of internal processes. Makes sense? I mean, we have external factors that impact us, and the tools we have for dealing with those external factors are our internal processes. And so, as follows, our success is a function of how effective those internal processes are. In this section of the program, I'm sharing with you what I see as 4 characteristics of how you and your associates can improve those internal processes. The one we talked about last time, the first characteristic we said was progressively. That process improvement occurs progressively. That improving these crucial internal processes is itself a process. It's not an event. And if we and the people who are participating with us enter into this dynamic with some sort of an addiction to instant or even short-term success, that's going to be a process killer. So progressively was the first characteristic. The one I want to talk about today is equally important, that these changes will be made. These processes will be improved as a result of a little bit of theory and a whole lot of effort. A little theory and a lot of effort. Here's kind of a down and dirty way to summarize this. People can pretend to be committed to winning, right? But people cannot pretend to do the things necessary to win. You understand the difference here is interest and commitment. How committed are we? Here's the way I would discuss this particular characteristic as it pertains to process improvements. The processes you're using right now were probably developed under different circumstances. The external factors that were in play when the current processes were developed were probably different than the external factors are right now. What that means is that some of those processes, in light of the changes that have occurred in the external factors, some of those processes may have lost their effectiveness. They may have become less effective, maybe even irrelevant. If we are going to keep pace with the changes in the external factors, then we're going to have to engage in some sort of process improvement dynamic. Unless we are committed to routinely scrutinizing and fine-tuning the processes that we rely on for our success, those processes will fall into a state where their effectiveness and even their relevance may be suspect, questionable, or lost altogether. Let me give you a real-world example to illustrate this distinction between theory and effort. I'm going to use the Christian tradition because it's the one I'm familiar with, but work with me on this. This coming Sunday, I'm sure most of you had every intention of attending a worship service. I want you to take Sunday off. Now you can tell your priest or preacher that you're working on a project for Bearden, and I'm sure that you'll get some sort of indulgence here. But anyway, take Sunday off. What I want you to do is sleep in a little bit. Get up around, 11:15, have some coffee, breakfast. Around 11:45 or so, get in your vehicle and drive to a church, preferably not the church you ordinarily attend. Find yourself a place to park as close to the door as possible. Park, watch, and if the weather would permit, roll down your window and listen to what happens. Now here's what's going on. Inside the church, for the past hour or so, the parishioners have been participating in what we could call religious or spiritual theory, the worship service. And now it's quitting time. And inside, the priest or preacher says words indicating that it's over, and there is some final ritual, there's some singing, praying, and now out they come. Watch what happens. The priest or preacher is standing at the door, and as they walk past the parishioners, there's handshaking, hugging, maybe a tear. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear people say things like, "Wonderful sermon, meant a lot to me." Now they're in the parking lot, so you better watch them carefully because they're going to be walking much faster. They're in their cars, the cars are starting, and now cars are flying all over the parking lot. What's their number one goal now? Beat the other guys to the cafeteria, right? What happens if one of them cuts the other one off in traffic? Don't show me. The real question is what happened to the spiritual or religious theory? And the answer I get from many people is, well, it flew out the window. It never got in the car with them. Where did they leave it? They left it in the sanctuary, didn't they? But what's the teaching? It's not so much what you hear, either in a sermon or a homily, or from a speaker, or from a tape program. It's not so much what you hear, it's what you do with what you hear when you get back to where you live. So let's look at the action items for this lesson. In a previous section of the program, we talked about leaders closing the gaps between what sounds good, and those would be words or phrases and things like mission statements, core values, and what gets done. This characteristic of how process improvement will be made illustrates that same gap, this characteristic being a little theory and a lot of effort. What I want you to do is I want you to go back over any of the lessons we've completed. Pick one idea or a suggestion from one of those lessons and then adapt and implement it. The only reason I've included these action items in every lesson is to provoke you to put effort into adapting and implementing the material I've covered, the theory. So this lesson really sums up nicely the things I've said before and after every list of action items. It is all about you converting the idea, the suggestion, or the technique from the theoretical to the practical. And that's a little bit of theory and a lot of effort. We'll pick up there next time.